Thanks, Elmer.
Yep.
Thank you. Great. So I guess we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. I really wish I could be there with you in person. Today's presentation is centering around artificial intelligence in law school. For the first part, I will be doing a presentation on academic support, friend or foe. And in my presentation, I'm really going to be evaluating generally the use of AI for law school student learning. I'll let you know I'm pretty much a beginner. I consider myself a novice in using artificial intelligence, but I'm really curious about using it and thinking about how I can sort of harness the potential of it in my classroom. And the second part of this presentation will have Professor Aryele Maye and Korin Munsterman, and they'll be actually demonstrating using artificial intelligence bots as a tool to promote student learning in their classrooms. And as I understand it, they've been doing this for some time. And so I'm really looking forward to their presentation as well, because they're what I consider as a novice, sort of the experts in the room. So on that sort of note of thinking about like what we are all bringing to the table, we all wanted to do a survey to get a sense of, who's in the room and what the level of experience is with AI. So the link for the survey is here on the screen. Also, online participants, if you have trouble with that, you can just plug in pollev.com/Jennifer Fernandez 927. And just 3 quick questions. The first question will be, do you use AI in your work? The second question is, how often do you use AI? And the third question is, how would you rate your ability with AI? Okay, so we'll just wait for the last 3 surveys here to finish up. Maybe those were some that were started and didn't get finished. So let's just go ahead and look at the results. So do you use AI in your work? It looks like 87% of you are using AI in your work and 13% are not. How often are you using AI? So 43% of you are using it often, 39% sometimes, 9% rarely, and 9% not at all. Could you imagine like how different that would have been just about a year or 2 ago? But it seems like we're significantly using AI. How would you rate your ability with using AI? Luckily, there's no one in the room who has no interest in using AI, but there are quite a few who are novice at 22%. 39% have, 38% have some experience, 29% very familiar, and 8% consider themselves to be novices. So I'm somewhere between I'm a novice and I have some experience myself, but as I mentioned, I'm very interested in learning more about AI and thinking about how to use it in the classroom. So some of my sort of original trepidation with using AI are obviously, the headlines and some, generally, I think sometimes we, in the law school setting in particular, are afraid of, change or bringing in new things. And also there are headlines around lots of concerns about AI and misuse of AI. But I've been thinking a lot about the possibility of harnessing the power of our artificial intelligence to improve student learning and support, but also mitigating harm and misuse. And I think to be able to do that, you really have to sort of understand the AI and understand the benefits and challenges. And as I walk through my part of the presentation, you're going to walk through sort of my understanding, as what I'm sort of coming up with. So, what is AI? AI is a simulation of human intelligence. It refers to the simulation of human-like intelligence in machines, enable them to think, learn, and perform tasks like humans. They can perform human intelligence tasks such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision making. And there are a variety of subfields of AI, like machine learning, neural networks, and natural language processing. AI, I think at this point is omnipresent. You can Google something and you'll get an artificial intelligence response. It is also evolving at a very rapid rate. I know that my students, particularly this past year, have told me, they've been telling me about some of the AI they've been using. Some of it seems great. Some of it I'm a bit skeptical of. But AI can be a very useful tool. And just so you know, I use AI to create that previous slide. So it's an example of how AI can, sort of make our work easier for us. It can be super helpful and it can be very efficient. But of course, there are some challenges of AI, right? And as I mentioned, those headlines and some of the concerns, particularly as we think about AI in the legal profession. So you have the issue of accuracy of information. AI can actually give you a wrong answer. There are articles about it fabricating content, just making up names. It can also omit information. It can also answer your question incorrectly sometimes. Also, misuse. So it can, again, create misinformation or fake content, particularly when thinking about like social media. Also can be used to deceive. Also, misuse can be in terms of our artificial intelligence policies in our classroom. So misusing in that sort of sense. And there's a large body of research on bias in generative AI. So, of course, concerns about AI systems having inherent biases based on the data it receives and perpetuating discriminatory practices and unfairness. And then finally, I'll group the confidentiality, privacy, and data security issues. As far as, I have read, there's not very much security or information on how secure it is, depending on which sources you're using, of course. There can be unauthorized incorporation of user data that's going into the AI. It's unclear about like where the data is being stored. And generally, there's a little like lack of transparency around what's happening with the data that's going in AI. So there are many concerns and fears, and I think that lots of professors, law professors, folks in our industries have those concerns, particularly when working with students. But as I mentioned, I've been thinking a lot about the untapped potential of artificial intelligence. And before I went to law school, I was a special education teacher. And I was able to I felt like a lot more sort of individualized work and skill building with smaller ratios in the special education classroom. So I've been particularly thinking about some of the untapped potential of AI and sort of that sense of helping students. So what are some of the fears, I think, particularly that professors may have? So I highlighted, wrote in yellow, one of my biggest fears, which is the reliance on AI. So decreased critical thinking skills, decreased problem solving abilities. Also some other fears that we've talked about, I know like at faculty meetings and in conversation with other colleagues, AI using the fear of students actually using AI to do their homework. Now, I know that sometimes you may specifically or explicitly instruct your students to use AI, but there's a concern that the AI is doing their work for them. Also, the concern about submitting that work that's generated by AI or plagiarizing, AI or failing to cite AI. And then also using AI on exams, right? Generating responses to exams using AI. But again, thinking about like in the context of student learning, there are some potential benefits of AI. So it can help students to learn at their own pace because, using the technology in some of these programs, they can work with students and sort of meet them where they are. You can customize the learning. You can build in the scaffolding into an AI. You can differentiate instruction, so give students different assignments based on where they are, which enhances inclusivity for our learners who are non-traditional or coming from different educational backgrounds. You can increase opportunities for assessment and evaluation. So not only can the AI create exams based on your material, but it can also evaluate the exams at a faster rate. It can meet the needs of various learning styles. So you can use a variety of types of AI, for your students based on the way they learn. And opportunity for real life or simulated learning with low stakes. And this is particularly like in our experiential learning classes, when you think about like negotiation, simulations, or opportunities to present an argument. You can be using AI for some of those things. So positive ways that I've heard students are using AI, and also ways that I think of them as being able to use AI as a tutor, so sort of in a tutorial to generate ideas when they're getting ready to create a draft, to get feedback more quickly on a written draft, to help them to strengthen their analysis. The AI can pinpoint what's going wrong with the analysis and what they could include to make the analysis better. It can help students to summarize large amounts of information, and students can also use it as an organizational tool. And again, from the academic support perspective, AI can create more formative assessments for your students. So again, quiz students throughout the semester. And I know that the standards are going to be potentially requiring more assessments throughout the semester. So that can be, a tool that can help us there. It can help you to create a curriculum or a syllabus based on your learning outcomes that you desire for your students. It can help you to evaluate student writing using a rubric that based on your requirements for the student writing. And it can help students understand challenging concepts. But I think that in order to sort of mitigate those fears and address those concerns, we have to think about our role as the law professor when we send our students out into the world, the wide world of AI, right? So I think we could provide an artificial intelligence policy. And I actually reviewed a couple of artificial intelligence policies when I was putting this presentation together. And I think we need to be more informed about the AI and about its benefits when we create those policies. And I think as time goes on, we'll learn more, but I think we also want to be informed when we create those policies. And I think that's really on us. Discuss AI use with the students, so talk to them about how to use AI. Don't just put it in a policy. Encourage students to reflect through reflection assignments, because if you're worried about like that critical thinking or that sort of meta processing that we want students to be able to do, and you're worried that they might be missing out on that by using AI, you can add things like reflection assignments, which encourages personal evaluation or reflection of their experiences. You can encourage students to evaluate and be thoughtful about the limits of AI. I saw an article about an assignment that you can give a student, or the idea of giving the student an assignment to evaluate the AI themselves. Also, you want to think about how to craft prompts to promote student learning. And I think Professor Munsterman and Professor Maye are going to be talking about that when we look at their bots. And then finally, expose students to the tools that we will be using in the profession, because ultimately, another sort of benefit of exposing students to AI in law school is that firms are likely, or they've already started adapting some AI as well. So I think it's really on us to be knowledgeable and to stay up to date. And it's sort of like, I'm thinking about like wizardry or magic, right? You're giving them the tools to go out into the world to use this AI. But again, you have to also tell them like sort of the caveats and how powerful, how much power they have in their hands, and how you have to sort of, when you have much power, you have much responsibility, right? So I just wanted to show a quick example. And again, I'm new to AI. Some of you are probably like, oh, that's very basic. But for those of you who are not like me, I have been playing around with sort of just GPTs and like thinking about how students can use those to help them to break down concepts that they may have particular trouble with in law school. So just recently, like I work with students in their first year of law school on their doctrinal classes, and there's an area of probably all of those core classes where the students particularly struggle. And we talk about like how law school can be very daunting. It's a you're learning a new language, you're learning totally new concepts, and it can be daunting, particularly for first generation law students who have no background on some of these legal concepts. So I don't think it's a tool that we can use to replace the law professor or to replace an academic support professor. But when students are particularly stuck on understanding some of the overall concepts, that's a place where we can maybe think about directing them to use GPT or AI, again, as a tutorial capacity, but again, responsibly, right? And sort of thinking about, how does this compare to what I learned? Is it helping me sort of with the big picture? It's helping me with the big picture, not like the way that my professor is teaching this topic. So I just plugged in, explain the civil procedure topic of personal jurisdiction to me like I'm 5 years old, because that's one of the topics that the students particularly struggled with last semester when I supported them in civil procedure. And you'll see that it gives a story about a cookie. And basically it gets down to the point that of what personal jurisdiction is figuring out which judge is allowed to hear this particular complaint. And I thought it was somewhat helpful for someone who's struggling with the concept, right? So it gives you a big rule, right? A judge in a place like California or New York can only help if the problem has something to do with that place. So if you sold the cookies in California and the kid came to you, then maybe the California judge is the right one. If you went to New York and sold the cookies there, then maybe the New York judge can help. And then it puts it in grown-up words. And then I think it directs them, do you want me to move on to a higher level, and put it in grown-up legal language. And then also I like this screen because it notes you're agreeing to the terms and have read our privacy policy. Do not share sensitive info. And I think this is just something else that we have to talk to students about think about what you're putting into the AI. So I think that example really speaks to the fact that AI can be used as sort of an equalizer to improve inclusivity in our law school classrooms. I know that I have a lot of students. Last semester, I supported 160 students in their civil procedure classroom, so I can't give the individualized support to every student, but we can think about the ways that we can use the AI again to meet the students where they are on more of an individual basis and differentiating instruction. And finishing up, the research is constantly evolving on AI. It is constantly evolving. It is getting smarter. But I think we could think about, as the instructor, being thoughtful about how you want to use it, but with the knowledge that it is a tool, like all of the tools that we have, is not a replacement for excellent teaching. So one way that I think about it is, and particularly for me as a skills instructor, right? You can do a little bit of backwards planning. So what skills do you want to address with your students? What AI tools will help you achieve the learning objectives or the goals that you have for the particular skills for your students? And you can chart it out, right? You can list out those particular skills here. So I have like exam writing, using IRAC, issue spotting, memorization, legal analysis. You can tell the students which tools are available, but also give them guidance. And in addition to a chart like this, you can think about how you want to use it, if you want to keep it to yourself, if you want to provide it to students. But in addition to a chart like this, I would always have those conversations with the students as well. So just wrapping up, my takeaways, again, approaching this as someone who is learning about this and thinking about how I can maximize the use of AI to make it effective for my students, but also, again, protecting my students, from some of the challenges of the AI. These are sort of my takeaways. So the title of my presentation was Friend or Foe, and I think AI can be a good friend of the law school academic support professor, but as with any relationship, even with our good friends, we want to set healthy boundaries. And I think we set those for ourselves and we help our students set those. So what I'll be doing and what I would recommend you do if you're interested in this is to review and evaluate the available tools. Again, looking forward to the second half of this presentation. We'll be seeing how to create bots to do some of this work. And then decide which specific skills or learning outcomes each of the tools can address, and provide guidance to students on how to use the AI and also how not to use the AI. So I think that's really our role, to provide that guidance to the students and to let them know that the AI is not a replacement, it is a tool. And I think for me in particular, the most important piece of the AI as a tool is that ability to I think meet the students where they are and to ultimately make the law school classroom more inclusive for students who struggle in different ways and for different reasons. All right, so I'll turn it over. Thank you all.
Thank you. Now I just have to find all the screens here. And here. If I can this percent. Okay. So now that we have kind of talked about some of the benefits, concerns, right? I think we have all either been there, shared some of those. We're going to kind of talk about how we can start incorporating AI into our classrooms and the ways in which we interact with students. And so we're going to kind of agree on some of the challenges that we face. Like we're going to talk about just in our space as educators, and then how AI can be a tool. And then let's take a little check-in and next steps. And so Korin and I are going to kind of go back and forth with our demos. Okay, so challenges. Let's see if we can agree. Students want immediate feedback. Yes, okay. Limited access to practical skill development. Yes, okay. Difficulty connecting theory to real-world application. All right, so faculty challenges, time constraints. Yeah. Scaling personalized instruction. Yeah. Okay. And then creating engaging practical learning experience. We're all trying to do that better, right? Because students are changing. So step one, we're just going to think about this as we work through this. Okay. And so we want to think about either a challenge that you're trying to solve, a opportunity that you want more of for your students, okay, or a gap that's there, right? Maybe just not happening. And so just think about that as we work through some of the demos. So maybe think about how you can start incorporating this or modifying or continuing what you're already doing. So we're not going to write a prompt, but we're going to talk about that. The step 2 would be to do that. So you're going to identify a challenge or problem, right? Then we move to actually writing a prompt, because when we talk about bots, the bot is better when we have a really solid prompt, right? The bot is only as good as the prompt. And so I listed these here though, because I have uploaded, there's a resource folder, I've uploaded this presentation. If you click it, you'll be able to check out the back end of one of my bots. So you'll be able to see the back end of how I put it together. A form to create your own bot. So we often walk away from these things and we've gotten so much information, but you'll have a form that you can use to kind of create your own. And so you'll know what to do. And then analysis of my bot and to see that you don't need everything on that sheet, but they'll also like some things are optional and some things you definitely need. So if we have some time at the end, we may come back to this, but I want to make sure we can go through the demonstrations. All right, we can't actually build a prompt right now, but these are the things that we'd want, right? We want to know the role, the context, the task, right? That is going to be done, the behavior. I'm always trying to make sure I identify the type of behavior and how I want it to interact with my student. I usually try to mirror how I would interact with my student. And so more, I tried to have like a warm but like stern, right? Communication. I still want you to be direct, right? So direct but warm, because sometimes it could be cold and like overly like, okay, this is too scientific the way you're communicating this, as if there's not another human on the other end of the, there's not a human on the other end of this, because they wouldn't know that. So I have to kind of help it do that, right? The format, how I want the responses to look, examples. So you want to show them what good looks like, right? We want to provide that in our knowledge base, because that's also the difference. When we go from a prompt to a bot, we have the ability to provide the knowledge base so that our students can have a more closed world, right? And so we can get better answers or better responses. Boundaries, I think that goes right to what Jennifer was saying. We always want to include boundaries in our prompts about what it's not to do, right? What is it not doing? A big one is I say, you do not give answers. We don't give answers and you don't write anything for anybody, okay? And so that's a big one. Also, errors, it's gonna hit in errors. It's like, oh, if you see something that conflicts with what you've learned in class, reach out to your professor. Or, I don't know this. Say you don't know, and it says, reach out to your professor, okay? Tone, again, that tone, key points, knowledge, of course, that's that knowledge base, and then reminders. I try to say anything that's like, sometimes I'll put like, do not make anything up, or other things that we want to reemphasize that it's the job, the role of, we want it to do. Okay, and so this is a little chart, and again, this is in your resource, going to be in your resource folder. This is a place where you can create platforms where you can create bots. Okay, so you can reference this later and kind of play around and see what you want to do. A lot of these have like entries are free, but if you want to really hang out there and do a lot, then you've got to pay, right? And so, for instance, Poe is $20 a month, but you have access to lots of different AI tools there. And so that's just an example, as well as Boodlebox. Many of us probably have heard of Claude, and of course, the GPT will show Soul Machine as well. A new one that I went to a conference yesterday morning, Character AI. I hadn't really played with it, but I played with it late last night. And so I'm going to show y'all that one too, because I thought it was just too cool. So let's go to the next thing. And so now we're at our live bot demonstration. So I'm first going to show you a professor feedback bot, and it may already be up, but we'll click on it just in case. Okay, so this bot is for bar exam takers. This is for a torts essay. Okay, now this is for professor use only. This is not something we're sharing out to students, but we are using on our side for workflow. Okay, so let's see, I'm gonna go to my AI resource here and click on this. And so I'm just gonna copy paste one of these answers. And as you see, it says a below passing answer, okay? And I'm going to throw this into my bot here. And so it says, hi, professor, I'm here to grade it. And so the big thing I did with this prompt is that I said I want basically three highs and three lows. I don't want you to highlight a whole bunch of stuff because that's going to shut down anybody who's studying for the bar exam. And then I want you to give an overall, okay? And so I'm going to copy paste this and we'll see how this works. So I also had to do inline comments because we have to give inline comments, right? So it's going to have comments for you to put in. Now, of course, you're going to review those comments, make sure they match your tone and you agree with them. And then at the end, it's going to give the overall assessment. Okay. Now, this is something that's done. This is a starting point, right? And I think it kind of gives this, when you're grading several essays, not really grading, because I would not use this for a grade. This is to give just quality feedback. I think it allows for consistency as well across several different essays that you're providing feedback for. So this is just one of them. Do you have any questions about this one? Yes.
Is it using its own knowledge to assess this, or did you give it like a sample best answer?
So yes, we agreed as a department that we were going to do this. So our bar exam director, she provided her sample answers that I provided to the knowledge base. And so that's what it's using to compare to. And so, and also I've done bots before where it's just like any essay you put in, you can get feedback. And I didn't like that as much. I like these now where they're super focused in on this particular essay. And so it's just a little bit more narrowly focused. And I think it's been a better tool. And so let's look at the Next one. So this one is a visual learning creator. So this again is for the professor, but it impacts how we interact with students, right? And so we had a professor who said, I worked with him in a workshop for his students in the fall. So I work in ASBR, so I did not say that. I work in academic success and bar readiness at UNT Dallas College of Law. And so I was doing a workshop for one of our doctrinal professors in commercial law. And so after doing that, he said, I want to do more of that, but I don't know where to get started. And so he sent me this email over Christmas break. And so I said, well, I made you a tool. And so I'm going to show you how it works. So you can upload your syllabus. So this is my syllabus. I'm teaching fashion law this summer, and it's going to start making us some things. So it's going to make us some suggestions. And it looks like it, yeah, there we go. It's having a little bit of a hard time, let's see, because of the Wi-Fi. It's loading. But as you'll see, it's suggesting different things I can do week to week that I could start building into the class. So just interactive elements, because that was something that she's like, I haven't done that, haven't really needed to do it. Now I'm starting to see the need. I need some help. So this is anyone can upload anyone for like law school can upload their syllabus and get that type of like suggestions. And it also suggests ways you can implement it into your course. Okay. And so usually it does this fun little thing where it shows me all these cool things that are like this on the side and beautiful charts. But sometimes it likes that and sometimes it doesn't. And it might have to do with the strength of my connection. But that's okay. But as you see, that's what it does. And you can play with it and it's a good time. And a big thing, of course, we always refine our prompts as you work through them. So like today, I might have to go refine the prompt because it's not doing exactly what I want it to do. Let's see now, going to student services. So we deployed this bot. It is a avatar bot for our bar preppers. And so I'm gonna let us get started with her.
Hi, how can I help you?
Hi, can we talk about my study prep today?
Of course. How's your study prep going today? What specific areas have you been focusing on?
I just finished contract formation and I'm getting a bit stuck on all of the rules about offer.
That's a common challenge. Let's break it down together. What do you currently understand about the elements of an offer? And what specific rules are causing you confusion?
So I'm muting her. So what you'll notice about her, since she's asking me questions, she's Socratic method style. She's not going to give them answers, right? It's too high stakes because like we know, it can hallucinate at times, but there is a knowledge base for her to reference when she is communicating with students. So a lot of this is to say, I might be overwhelmed. And so I might say, oh, you know what? Actually, also, I've been pretty overwhelmed with bar prep. Could you help me talk about
It's
how to manage
completely normal to feel overwhelmed during this process. Many successful attorneys have felt the same way. What self-care strategies have you been using to manage your stress? Have you considered reaching out to your law school's bar coach for support? They can provide great strategies for balancing study and well-being.
So again, emphasizing the importance of this is not a replacement, this is a tool, send them to us, okay? I think that's the big thing. And then also we have students who are leaving, graduate, they leave campus, they go back home to study, to manage not being able to work and so they don't want rent and all those things going on at the same time. So they're not gonna have that connection to campus, but at least, or they don't have someone to bounce things off, they don't have a study group. So this is kind of the place of that. So I'll let you all know at the end of the summer who's using it and if they still feel like it's weird, because some students feel like it looks weird initially and then they get comfortable with it. However, my daughter, who's 3, finds her to be very natural. And so I think as students who are going to be coming in, this is going to be their normal, even though it's not necessarily ours right now. So I'm going to close her out. She's looking sad because she's empathizing. So she does the facial response. And so, am I good on time, Korin? Yes, okay. And then, so this is a negotiation bot that I have I'm deploying for my fashion law course. And so it says, are you ready to get started? This allows students to interact and negotiate a license agreement. They get a role, and then from there, they actually get to redline language in the interaction, okay? And they get feedback on it. So let's see, yes. Okay. So welcome, there's no sound on this and it's very far away, but they're basically laying out the background of the problem and giving their proposal for the license agreement, okay? And so the job of the student is to then respond and to say what they want. And so they go back and forth for a bit, and then they get some language. I can try, let's see if I can I'll do 1 year. Let's talk about the option. Did I send it too soon? Yes. Delete message. Yes. Don't delete it. I don't want to talk about that. Okay, let's do 3 years is fine. However, 1 year guaranteed with options for year 1, 2, and 3. Oh, 2 and 2. It's fine. It'll correct me maybe. Okay, so thank you for your response. And then provided a counter proposal. Okay, so this again allows them to have that experience negotiating, low stakes environment, not something they would even get to do probably as a first year, right? But they would be watching this going on, maybe providing the research for this, doing the actual red lines. But this is just the opportunity for them to have the exposure, and it relates to our class coverage. And the last one I'm going to show is Jay Grayson, because one of our crim law professors has reached out about creating a bot. And so once they mentioned this yesterday, and then so accounting has also, another discipline has been talking about the use of AI in their learning space. And so they're using this. And so I'm actually going to do a new chat. Let's see. And I'm still learning, which is why I was very excited about showing this, because you don't have to be an expert at this at all to just try it out, right? And so let me move this over. Let's see if I can chat. I want to chat. Okay. So there's some cool things about this. You can call the person. It's very cool. But you can also, my voice, there we go. The voice is not activated. So turn voice on. Fantastic. So what you'll see is it'll say,
welcome to Criminal Law. I'm Jack Grayson. I'll be throwing real-world scenarios at you. Your job? Figure out what crime was committed and why it matters. Ready for your first case?
said yes. And then he's like,
all right, listen up. A woman arrives at her neighbor's house. She's angry. She believes he's been threatening her with a gun. She sees him on his porch, shotgun in hand. She pulls her own gun, fires first. He's shot dead. What crime, if any, was committed?
right. And so, not sure. And then it's like, okay, basically trying to reassure.
That's okay. I'm not testing your knowledge. I'm testing your reasoning. Here, the question is about self-defense. Does this incident qualify? To determine that, we need to dive into the specifics.
So the student could, again, work through having this interaction. This would be great for in class, you cover a topic in groups, you have these kind of conversations, they could work through a task like this, or they need additional help, right? So this was just a fun one I thought I'd add and share with y'all, because I'm going to be exploring this one too. The setup for the prompting is completely different, and I'm going to add it to that resource folder, which is why I made it a drive, so that you can, once I figure it out, I'll upload it and you can also explore that as well. So I'm going to stop share and turn it over to Korin, and then we'll come back for the end.
Thank you. Okay, you guys can see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Great. Okay, so what you're looking at here is my ChatGPT window, and you can see I'm on my GPTs over here, and you can see I have created a lot of GPTs, right? And the reason originally I had some things in Poe, so I had this one over Poe. This is a negotiator prompt. So it's for the negotiations professor that she can give to her students so they can practice outside of class. And basically it'll walk them through different scenarios. One is about Morton Street, where they're selling a property and you have to go back and forth and you find out down, throw some wrenches into the negotiation, especially for someone who's not used to negotiations. Like all of a sudden there's like a chemical cesspool on the property that they weren't aware of and all that kind of stuff. So it gets challenging as you go through it. I also have this Boodle box over here. Soul Machine over here. I've asked my students, like Aryele has asked hers, on the creepiness factor. And initially, when they first saw him talking, they were like, "Oh no, he's creepy." But then when I started playing it, they got used to him, and they kind of liked it. And what this does is it's for client interviewing and counseling. And so there will be different characters who he'll represent with different scenarios. Right now, I'm limiting it to restoring a driver's license and estates, because those are the kind of cuts of clinics that the students go out and they get their initial exposure to client interviewing. So I wanted them to be able to practice beforehand. And so we're going to deploy this in the clinic this summer. And what happens is as you're talking to your client, you can interrupt it and say, "Okay, coach, how am I doing?" And then you'll get direct feedback, but it won't break up the conversation in order to give you feedback. You have to request it. So we have those. I have one that's on Boodlebox, that the advantage to this platform, though we haven't deployed it yet, Aryele, you're doing it this summer, is that we can actually get, one of the issues we've had is getting data. We want to see how the students are using it, any issues that they're coming up with. Maybe they're asking it to do something more creative that we could build into the bot. We just want actual data. And the thing with Boodlebox is that you can create your bots in there and you can share it out within a folder, and then all of the chats that happen outside, like when your students are doing them, get saved into that folder. So you can see the individual chats that they do, and then you can save all of those individual chats, as a knowledge base. So you grab them all and you say, create a knowledge base, and then you can do some analytics on them. So we're interested to see how that works. Again, we'll get back to you. So I just wanted to walk through a couple of the custom GPTs I created. One of the reasons I moved and started creating so much of this in ChatGPT, even though Claude is my preferred generative AI platform, is that if a student has a subscription to anything, they're more likely to have a subscription to ChatGPT than they are to anything else. And it also has the added functionality of images, image creation, and all that other kind of stuff that they would probably like to have if they're going to pay for anything. So even though I tell them Claude is a better writer, this one is like an all over purpose tool that they might want to subscribe to, because you can not only run these custom GPTs in it, but you can do a lot of other things on your own. The other thing is, the reason I wanted to create bots, and Aryele and I've discussed this, is that there aren't a whole lot of research studies on how generative AI is helping students in education, but there are few, granted outside of the law, the domain of law, but in other types of subjects. And those studies have shown that high-performing students are going to take ownership of their own learning, right? So they're going to learn how to use generative AI in order to improve their learning. But medium performing and low performing students are not necessarily going to do that. But if you give them a structured AI, you give them a bot to use that's been, and you give them some kind of guidance on how to use it, then you see a dramatic increase in their performance. But if you just leave them to themselves to figure out how to use generative AI to help them learn, they'll try it, they won't really know how to use it very well, and it won't be that effective for them. So giving them custom bots helps a lot. Plus, I have seen, like I'm sure you guys have, talking to different vendors, and some of them provide the answers, and I don't want them to ever provide an answer. I have seen a case briefing prompt in several different applications, and without fail, they provide the answer. So we don't want that. We want them to have a guide to learn how to do a case brief. So this is the Case Briefing 101 bot. You can see it's going to ask me initially what subject or what case I want to do. Then I choose pause graph from this list. It gives some suggestions of which ones. Oh, I'm sorry, I chose torts, and then it gives some torts cases, and then I choose pause graph, and you can see it has the opinion. The student can also upload an opinion if they want to. And it's going to walk them through case citation, the parties, the procedural history, facts of issues, rule of law, et cetera, and how to find that stuff. And it's telling them, consider the following questions to guide your analysis as you read the case. And then as you go on, it will help you see whether you actually did identify the relevant facts, whether you did properly identify the issue. This one is my SCOTUS argument simulation. So this is for like mock moot court rather, and for all of the trial advocacy programs we have. So first you tell it who you're representing, what the core legal issues are, what constitutional provisions or statutes are relevant, what precedents do you plan to rely on, et cetera. So you tell them all that, respond, and I'm doing the New York Times versus Microsoft and OpenAI copyright. So I tell it all of that information, and I provide the actual, I provided an order, a recent order to the defendant's motions to dismiss. And then it's going to walk me through, right? This is what it knows. Here's a summary of the order, so you can correct it or not if it didn't interpret it correctly. And then you're going to start constructing your respondent's argument, thesis statement, specific points from Authors Guild versus Google, et cetera, et cetera. And the last one is, do you want to start oral argument simulation now, or do you want to build out your brief outline first? So this one, if you open it up on your phone, you can actually have like talk to the Supreme Court justices, and it will say, you want a question from Sotomayor, you want a question from Alito, and you can talk back to it. And meanwhile, it's going to give you feedback at the very end. It's fun. I like it. This is a course information bot, so I don't know about you guys, but I often get questions from students, and the answer is already provided in the syllabus. And you want to just say, look at the syllabus, read the syllabus, right? So I created a little bot that I put in my Canvas courses where I've uploaded the syllabus. I'm contemplating adding all of my slide decks to it as I go through this semester. And they can query that instead of asking me, right? So they can ask, here's initial information it's going to provide. And then down here, when's my next assignment due? And then it identifies the assignment, and I could go on and ask it more questions. This one is the Socratic method simulator. So that's just the, I'm sorry, I'm doing the product, not the name. This should say Socratic. I'll fix it. But basically, if you click here to start, this is for students. I hated cold calling when I was in law school. And it wasn't so much the first question that I was going to be asked. It was the second question, the follow-up one, that I would freeze. So we're going to go through this. Do you have a case selected and already selected and read a case you'd like to be questions from? So I'm going to say pause graph. Then it's going to ask me what kind of professor I want. Do I want a methodical and precise one? Do I want expansive and policy driven? Do I want stern, Socratic, and challenges every assumption like Kingsfield? Do I want professor friendly, right? So I'm going to say Kingsfield. So it gives you some visuals, right? He walks into the classroom dressed in a crisp gray suit. He glances around the room with measured intensity, then fixes his gaze directly on you, taps his fountain pen lightly against the desk, and says sternly, Mr. Ms., insert your name. And I'm going to add thing where you can actually like enter your name if you want to, so that it fills that up. You're on call. What are the essential facts of Paul's graph that led you to the plaintiff bringing suit? And he leans back, watching you intently, expression unreadable, and you say, fireworks cause a scale to fall and harm Mrs. Oliver. Right? Bad answer. But let's see what he thinks. Yes, yes, the scale fell, but how? You skipped over the very chain of events, blah, 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 blah. And you can see how it plays out, right? And so they learn how to actually, how the Socratic method works before their first day of law school. This is a mnemonics and memory aid tool. So I'm going to click here. So if you're trying to memorize rules, this is a system you might want to use. And it's going to ask you what you're currently studying. So I'm going to say criminal law. Now let's do criminal procedure. Okay. Oh, I should have done evidence, whatever. You get what I'm saying. Okay. Or hearsay exceptions or rules under federal rules of evidence, or I'm still going to say hearsay exceptions evidence. Okay, so here are some mnemonics, and it's going to print a chart. Present sense is really everything doctors love about business, right? And then it gives present sense impression, excited utterance, and all of these. And the mnemonic it has come up with is this. Dies, declare it must be unavailable, residual exception, et cetera, et cetera. So if I like those, but I think, oh, I want something a little bit more interesting, is can you create a song lyric in the style of so if you can keep like the soundtrack of like a Prince song, like Kiss or something, then you can see how that will play. Right. And it will do images, it will do little stories, it will do pretty much anything that you ask it to do to help you remember things. You can even ask it what other tools are available for me to help me remember these rules. This one is client interviewing, right? I mentioned I did that in Soul Machines as well. I also did that as a bot here. And I think that's all I wanted to show you so that you guys had time for questions, if any. Well, can I ask you a question? Are any of you doing anything like this?
Yes.
I'm not, but I'm just wondering, how hard is it to actually do this? I may be the only person in this room who hasn't done this, but how hard is it to set one of these bots up?
It's not very hard. You just have to know the steps to go through and recognize that, as Aryele mentioned earlier, it's an iterative process. So you have to, because the models change, that may affect how your prompt works. So you have to go in and make sure that they're still working the way that you expect them to work. But it's not very hard. And if you were giving a presentation, Aryele and I are giving a presentation next week for the ALS section on technology, law, and education on Wednesday. And we're going to walk through these, but also like how to actually create them.
And before, because I don't want to forget, if you want to scan the QR code for the resources that we talked about, let me.
I'm going to stop there.
And that way I have access to it.
What do you, anybody have an opinion on any of these? Do you hate them? Do you like them? What?
And while I'm thinking about this, another way to figure out the prompting is, so this morning I was again working with the character AI and I used ChatGPT to help me learn how to better optimize my prompt. character AI. So I was like, okay, this isn't working. How do I do this? Where's my knowledge base? How do I? And they're like, it's a completely different way to do it, but it was teaching me how to do it. So I was just going back and forth and saying, okay, this, why am I not getting this? Where do I need to put this information? And so it was really helpful to figure that part out. So you can always just ask the AI itself too, sometimes like, how do I write a good prompt that's like for your platform? I'm just checking the chat. We saw one, I think there was someone in the chat said they were doing some things like this online.
Okay.
Mhm. Super cool. What are you doing, Sean? If you don't mind, if you want to share. Not sure.
I had a feeling it would be Sean.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I make a bunch of bots like Korin for specific tasks.
Okay.
I was just wondering if you have a budget for this, or like how, are you using like free versions of stuff, or are you just like using your own money? I'm just curious, like I
Right,
use my own
fair.
money for both.
Yeah, so Corinne will probably be the person that says like she has tons of platforms and I have like racking up as well and using own money, our own funds. However, we did benefit from the school providing a grant. We're part of like community of practice and AI group. And so those that were active in that received a grant to kind of explore different tools because we're just trying to, again, get data and how it works and how to do things. And so the cool thing, there's Boodlebox, which I do like because they are intended for higher education. There's a free version for students to use. So you can build a bot on there and provide it to students and they don't have to pay, but it's not a premium bot. So it's not gonna be a Claude, but it could be like a Chat GPT 4.0 mini, right? And so I've tried like my negotiations when I showed you all, it's on Boodlebox. However, when I switched it to that was non-premium, it didn't work. However, I was able to get a way to get that covered for my students for this summer so they didn't have to pay for it because again, I'm trying it out. So I was able to get around the fees for that this time. And so also it's just kind of sometimes just asking, there's probably little grants out there too, because everyone is curious about even just law and AI, right? And how we can incorporate it in the classroom and in student learning. More questions? Yes, sir.
Not a question, I just wanted to let people know I put the link to the ALS webinar in the Google spreadsheet.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Is Sean respond? Anything else? Any other questions? No? All right, let's see, I think I had a final question for you all. So we've got to see some bots, maybe some things we've seen, maybe things we haven't seen. Did we think about any ways we could like incorporate this into what we're doing? Yeah.
I really liked your ask the syllabus. That sounds like something.
Oh yeah, the FAQ. I wrote it down too. I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that again. Because even just for assignments, I presented something that's due at the end of the semester, and I saw the eyes and the face. Like it's like, okay, we need more help with this. I gotta flesh this out. But here's like an FAQ for it.
I think like what you're doing with like the bar prep answers. So I am very low staffed right now, and so in the fall, we're gonna have very large number of students, and so we've been trying to think about how we can give them more feedback. So the assignments they're graded for completion,
Right.
but the students deserve something more than just like a great, you did it. So it might be a good opportunity to give them feedback that isn't necessarily great.
Yeah.
We talked to the bar director and I spoke to 7 of the 15 passers who took the bar in February for the first time, right? Early bar takers. And we've spoken to 7, we're trying to speak to the rest of them. All of them used ChatGPT or generative, some platform to help them get immediate feedback on their essay writing. And they found it extremely useful because, you know, they're using the commercial bar prep program. And maybe they're studying contracts and then they've moved on to criminal law and then they get the feedback from contracts, but they've already moved on. And it's not interactive, right? They can't go back and ask, well, how can I improve this then, right? They don't it's not an interactive feedback. They prefer getting it immediately and one that they can interact with and ask for explanations if they didn't understand the concept or didn't state the law correctly or all that stuff.
Mhm. And we've deployed some bots in, was it BA? And we did a feedback bot. The professor had been providing an essay for students to turn in. She never graded it. They just got the sample answer back, like review the sample answer to your answer. And so this time we had them use the bot. And so many of the comments were, I actually got feedback on my essay, my writing, and then I was able to interact and see how I could improve. And of course, a lot of them said like, and we had to emphasize, it's a supplement. It's a supplement. And so there was super positive comments towards, I can't remember the percentage like off the top of my head right now, but many students really appreciate it, just having the additional opportunity for feedback. So again, there was a little gap there. If they're getting an opportunity to write the essay, but not getting another opportunity for feedback, and their exam was an essay exam. So yeah.
I've had some students approach me to create one for commercial law for studying for the bar. And so I ran it by the commercial law professor so he could, kick the tires on it before I gave it to the students. And he said it was rock solid. We've worked with him before. I created one for him to deploy in his class on understanding acceptance, understanding consideration. He also teach contracts. And so we got feedback on that. And basically the students were saying, can we get more of these, please? That was the basic response.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all so much. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.